ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮದ ಪ್ರಾಯೋಜಕರು
ಐಡಿಯಲ್ ಕೆಫೆ,
ಶ್ರೀರತ್ನಂ ಮಲ್ಟಿ ಕ್ಯೂಸಿನ್ ವೆಜ್ ರೆಸ್ಟೋರೆಂಟ್,
Attica Gold Company,
ಆಭರಣ ಉಡುಪಿ, ಮ್ಯಾಂಗ್ಲಾ, ಶಿವಮೊಗ್ಗ, ಕಾರ್ಕಳ and ಕುಂದಾಪುರ.
ಅಮೃತ ವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯಂ, ಕೆಎಂಸಿ ಹಾಸ್ಪಿಟಲ್, ಲೈಫ್ಸ್ ಆನ್, ಭಾರತ್ ಆಟೋ ಕಾರ್ಸ್ ಪ್ರೈವೇಟ್ ಲಿಮಿಟೆಡ್.
Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. These words of the great poet William Butler Yeats in his poem The Second Coming probably reflect the kind of society in which we live. If you ask me whether these words apply to the Indian context completely, then I would say a qualified yes. Qualified because Indian society is a different kind of society. We live in the millennial society. India is a country that is progressing by leaps and bounds, but we have a lot of problems, and the youth of this country inherit these problems from us. Problems of all kinds, problems of unemployment, problems of illiteracy, of poverty, of corruption, you name it, these problems are there. The point for us is how do we solve these problems, how do we move forward to a society that is humane and enlightened. That is the crisis today.
ನಾನು ಈ ಸರಕಾರಿ ಕಾಲೇಜಿಗೆ ಸೇರಿದ 6-7 ತಿಂಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಶರಣು ಹೊಡೆದೆನಾದರೂ ಅಲ್ಲಿಂದ ನಾನಾಗಿ ಪಡೆದ ಜ್ಞಾನ ನನ್ನ ಬದುಕಿನ ಬಂಡವಾಳವಾಗಿದೆ. ಇವು ಜ್ಞಾನಪೀಠ ಪುರಸ್ಕೃತ ಸಾಹಿತಿ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಕೋಟ ಶಿವರಾಮ ಕಾರಂತರು ತಾವು ಕಲಿತ ಸರಕಾರಿ ಅಂದರೆ ಇಂದಿನ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾನಿಲಯ ಕಾಲೇಜಿನ ಕುರಿತು ಹೇಳಿದ ಮಾತುಗಳು. ಪ್ರಾಂತೀಯ ಶಾಲೆಯಾಗಿ ಆರಂಭವಾಗಿ ಸರಕಾರಿ ಕಾಲೇಜಾಗಿ ನಡೆದು ಬಂದು ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾನಿಲಯ ಕಾಲೇಜಾಗಿ ಬೆಳೆದು ನಿಂತ ಈ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಗೀಗ 150 ಸಂವತ್ಸರಗಳ ಸಂಭ್ರಮ. 55 ವರ್ಷಗಳ ಹಿಂದೆ ನಗರದ ಹಿರಿಯರು ಸುಮಾರು 65,000 ರೂಪಾಯಿಗಳನ್ನು ಸಂಗ್ರಹಿಸಿ ಶಾಲೆ ಆರಂಭಿಸಿದ್ದು ಇವರ ಶಿಕ್ಷಣ ಪ್ರೀತಿಗೆ ದ್ಯೋತಕವಾಗಿದೆ. ಮಂಜೇಶ್ವರ ರಾಮಪ್ಪ, ಎಸ್ ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸ ರಾವ್, ಟಿ ರಾಮಚಂದ್ರರಾವ್, ನೆಲ್ಲಿಕಾಯಿ ಗುಂಡೂರಾವ್, ನೆಲ್ಲಿಕಾಯಿ ತಿಮ್ಮಪ್ಪಯ್ಯ, ಸಾದತ್ ಖಾನ್, ಸಿ ರಂಗಪ್ಪ, ನಾರಾಯಣ ಪೈ ಮತ್ತು ಸ್ವಾಮಿ ಅಯ್ಯರ್ ಅವರನ್ನೊಳಗೊಂಡ ಸಮಿತಿ ಪ್ರಾಂತೀಯ ಶಾಲೆ ಆರಂಭಿಸಿತು. ತದನಂತರ 1868ರಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂದಿನ ಬ್ರಿಟಿಷ್ ಸರಕಾರ ಮೆಟ್ರಿಕ್ಯುಲೇಷನ್ ಬರೆದ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳು ವಿದ್ಯಾಭ್ಯಾಸಕ್ಕೆ ಮದ್ರಾಸಿಗೆ ಹೋಗುವ ಅನಿವಾರ್ಯತೆಯನ್ನು ತಪ್ಪಿಸಲು ನಗರದಲ್ಲೇ ದ್ವಿತೀಯ ದರ್ಜೆ ಕಾಲೇಜೊಂದನ್ನು ಸ್ಥಾಪಿಸಲು ನಿರ್ಧರಿಸಿತು. ಕೊನೆಗೂ ಅಂದಿನ ಹಿರಿಯರು ಯೋಜಿಸಿದಂತೆ ಗಾಥಿಕ್ ಶೈಲಿಯ ಕಟ್ಟಡ ನಿರ್ಮಾಣಗೊಂಡಿತು. ಆಗ ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ವೆಚ್ಚವಾದ ಹಣ ಸುಮಾರು 28,490 ರೂಪಾಯಿಗಳು. 1920ರ ವೇಳೆಗೆ ಕಚೇರಿಗೆ ತಾಗಿಕೊಂಡಂತಿರುವ ತರಗತಿ ಕೋಣೆಗಳನ್ನು ನಿರ್ಮಿಸಲಾಯಿತು. 1922ರಲ್ಲಿ ಕವಿ ರವೀಂದ್ರರು ಇಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ಭೇಟಿ ನೀಡಿದ್ದ ನೆನಪಿಗೆ ಅಕಾಡೆಮಿ ಹಾಲ್ ಅಥವಾ ರವೀಂದ್ರ ಕಲಾಭವನವನ್ನು ಸ್ಥಾಪಿಸಲಾಯಿತು. 1901ರಿಂದ ಕಾಲೇಜಿನಲ್ಲಿ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿನಿಯರಿಗೂ ಪ್ರವೇಶ ಕಲ್ಪಿಸಲಾಯಿತು. ಕಾಲೇಜ್ ಡೇ ಮೂಲಕ ಸಾಂಸ್ಕೃತಿಕ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಗಳಿಗೆ ಅನುವು ಮಾಡಿಕೊಡಲಾಯಿತು. 1922ರಿಂದ 1936ರವರೆಗೆ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾನಿಲಯ ಕಾಲೇಜಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರಾಂಶುಪಾಲರಾಗಿ ಸೇವೆ ಸಲ್ಲಿಸಿದ ಗೋವಿಂದ ಕೃಷ್ಣ ಚೆಟ್ಟೂರರ ಅವಧಿ ಕಾಲೇಜಿನ ಪಾಲಿಗೆ ಪರ್ವಕಾಲ. ಅವರು ಫೋಟೋಗ್ರಾಫಿ ಕ್ಲಬ್, ಡ್ರಾಮ್ಯಾಟಿಕ್ಸ್ ಕ್ಲಬ್, ಹಂಟರ್ಸ್ ಕ್ಲಬ್ನಂತಹ ಪಠ್ಯೇತರ ಕ್ಲಬ್ಗಳನ್ನು ಸ್ಥಾಪಿಸಿದರು. 1929 ನವೆಂಬರ್ 30ರಂದು ಕಾಲೇಜ್ ಡೇ ದಿನ ಓಲ್ಡ್ ಬಾಯ್ಸ್ ಅಸೋಸಿಯೇಷನ್ ಆರಂಭಿಸಲು ತೀರ್ಮಾನಿಸಲಾಯಿತು. ಅದೇ ದಿನ ಕಾಲೇಜಿನ ಮುಂಭಾಗದಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಸಣ್ಣ ಪಾರ್ಕನ್ನು ನಿರ್ಮಿಸಲಾಗಿತ್ತು. ಕಾಲೇಜಿನ ದಕ್ಷಿಣ ಭಾಗದ ಕಟ್ಟಡ ಸಂಪೂರ್ಣಗೊಂಡಿದ್ದು 1928ರಲ್ಲಿ. ಶಿವರಾಮ ಕಾರಂತ ಭವನ ಮತ್ತು ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಹೊಂದಿಕೊಂಡಿರುವ ಕೆಲವು ಕೊಠಡಿಗಳು ನಿರ್ಮಾಣಗೊಂಡಿದ್ದು ಕೂಡ ಆಗ. 1933ರ ಜುಲೈನಲ್ಲಿ ಕಾಲೇಜಿನಲ್ಲಿ ನಡೆಯುವ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಗಳ ಕುರಿತು ಹಾಗೂ ಇತರ ಲೇಖನಗಳನ್ನು ಪ್ರಕಟಿಸುವ ಕಾಲೇಜ್ ಟೈಮ್ಸ್ ಎಂಬ ವಾರಪತ್ರಿಕೆಯನ್ನು ಆರಂಭಿಸಲಾಯಿತು. ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳ ಈ ಪ್ರಯೋಗ ಬಹಳ ಯಶಸ್ವಿಯಾಗಿದೆ. 1948-49 ಕಾಲೇಜಿನ ಇತಿಹಾಸದಲ್ಲಿ ಮರೆಯಲಾಗದ ವರ್ಷ. ಕಾಲೇಜು ಪ್ರಥಮ ದರ್ಜೆ ಕಾಲೇಜಾಗಿ ಪರಿವರ್ತನೆಯಾಗುವುದರ ಜೊತೆಗೆ BA ಮತ್ತು BCom ಪದವಿಗಳು ಆರಂಭವಾದವು. 73 ವರ್ಷಗಳಿಂದ ಕಾಲೇಜಿನಲ್ಲಿದ್ದ ಪ್ರೌಢಶಾಲಾ ವಿಭಾಗ ರದ್ದಾಯಿತು. ಆಧುನಿಕ ಚಿಂತನೆಯ ಖಡಕ್ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿತ್ವದ MI ಹಶಿಮಿ ನೂತನ ಪ್ರಾಂಶುಪಾಲರಾಗಿ ಅಧಿಕಾರ ವಹಿಸಿಕೊಂಡರು. ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ MA ರಾಮಚಂದ್ರ ರಾಯರು ಪ್ರಾಂಶುಪಾಲರಾಗಿದ್ದ ಅವಧಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾನಿಲಯ ಕಾಲೇಜು ಶತಮಾನೋತ್ಸವವನ್ನು ಆಚರಿಸಿತು. 1989ರಿಂದ 1992ರ ನಡುವೆ ಶಿಕ್ಷಣ ಸಚಿವರಾಗಿದ್ದ ಕಾಲೇಜಿನ ಹಳೆ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿ ವೀರಪ್ಪ ಮೊಯ್ಲಿಯವರು ಕಾಲೇಜು ಮಂಗಳೂರು ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾನಿಲಯದ ಘಟಕ ಕಾಲೇಜಾಗಿ ಕಾರ್ಯನಿರ್ವಹಿಸಲು ಸಾಧ್ಯವಾಗಿಸುವಂತೆ 1992ರಲ್ಲಿ ಆದೇಶವೊಂದನ್ನು ಹೊರಡಿಸಿದರು. ಇದರೊಂದಿಗೆ ಕಾಲೇಜನ್ನು ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾನಿಲಯ ಕಾಲೇಜು ಎಂದು ಕರೆಯಲು ಅನುಮತಿ ದೊರೆಯಿತು. ನಂತರದ ಈ 26 ವರ್ಷಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಇಲ್ಲಿ 10 ಮಂದಿ ಪ್ರಾಂಶುಪಾಲರಾಗಿ ಸೇವೆ ಸಲ್ಲಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ. 1993ರಲ್ಲಿ ನಾರಾಯಣನ್ ನಾಯರ್ ರವರ ಬಳಿಕ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ HV ಶಂಕರನಾರಾಯಣ ಪ್ರಾಂಶುಪಾಲರಾದರು. ನಾಯರ್ ರವರು 2ನೇ ಅವಧಿಗೆ ಅಧಿಕಾರ ವಹಿಸಿಕೊಂಡು ಸುದೀರ್ಘ ಸೇವೆ ಸಲ್ಲಿಸಿದರು. ಬಳಿಕ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ K ಸುಬ್ರಹ್ಮಣ್ಯ ಭಟ್, ಗೋವಿಂದ ನಾಯಕ್, M ಸೀತಾರಾಮ್ ಪೂಜಾರಿ, ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ HR ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀನಾರಾಯಣ ಭಟ್, ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಸತ್ಯನಾರಾಯಣ ಮಲ್ಲಿಪಟ್ಟಣ ಮತ್ತು U ಸುನಂದ ಅವರು ಸೇವೆ ಸಲ್ಲಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಹಾಲಿ ಪ್ರಾಂಶುಪಾಲ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಉದಯಕುಮಾರ್ MA ಸೆಪ್ಟೆಂಬರ್ 22, 2015ರಿಂದ ತಮ್ಮ ಕರ್ತವ್ಯವನ್ನು ನಿಭಾಯಿಸುತ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಪ್ರಾಂಶುಪಾಲ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ HV ಶಂಕರನಾರಾಯಣರ ಅವಧಿಯಲ್ಲಿ 1996ರಲ್ಲಿ ಕಾಲೇಜು 125ನೇ ವರ್ಷದ ಸಂಭ್ರಮವನ್ನು ಆಚರಿಸಿತು.
1868ನೇ ಇಸ್ವಿ ಸೆಪ್ಟೆಂಬರ್ 20ನೇ ತಾರೀಕಿಗೆ ಆರಂಭಗೊಂಡ ಈ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆ 150 ವರ್ಷಗಳನ್ನು ಪೂರೈಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಒಂದು ಸಂಸ್ಥೆ 150 ವರ್ಷ ಒಂದು ಸಮಾಜದಲ್ಲಿ ಬಾಳಿ ಬದುಕಿ ಮತ್ತೆ ಯಶಸ್ಸಿನ ಪಥದಲ್ಲಿ ಮುನ್ನಡೆಯುವುದು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದರೆ ಇದು ಒಂದು ಚಾರಿತ್ರಿಕ ವಿಷಯ ಅಂತ ನಾನು ಗ್ರಹಿಸಿದ್ದೇನೆ. ಇಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಸನ್ನಿವೇಶದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವೆಲ್ಲರೂ ಇರುವುದು ನಮ್ಮ ಪುಣ್ಯ ಅಂತ ನಾನು ಭಾವಿಸಿದ್ದೇನೆ. ಸಾಮಾನ್ಯವಾಗಿ ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಬ್ಬರು ಒಂದು ಕೇಳುವ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ, ಮಂಗಳೂರು ಈಗ ಶಿಕ್ಷಣದ ಕಾಶಿಯಾಗಿದೆ. ಇಂಥ ಒಂದು ಶಿಕ್ಷಣದ ಕಾಶಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಹಲವಾರು ಖಾಸಗಿ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಗಳ ಪೈಪೋಟಿಯನ್ನು ಎದುರಿಸಿ ಈ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆ ಸಮಾಜಕ್ಕೆ ಅತ್ಯುನ್ನತ ಕೊಡುಗೆಯನ್ನು ಕೊಡ್ತಾ ಇರುವುದರ ರಹಸ್ಯ ಏನು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಮುಖ್ಯ ಕಾರಣ ಈ ಕಾಲೇಜಿನ ಒಂದು ಪರಂಪರೆ, ಇಲ್ಲಿರುವಂಥ ಶಿಕ್ಷಕರು, ಇಲ್ಲಿರುವಂಥ ಸವಲತ್ತುಗಳು ಮತ್ತು ನಾವು ಈ ಹಿಂದಿನಿಂದ ಬಳುವಳಿಯಾಗಿ ಪಡೆದುಕೊಂಡಂಥ ಈ ಕಾಲೇಜಿನದ್ದೇ ಆದಂಥ ಒಂದು ಅನನ್ಯತೆ.
ಈ ಶಿಕ್ಷಣ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆ ಕರಾವಳಿ ಮಲೆನಾಡಿನ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳಲ್ಲದೆ ಗಡಿನಾಡಿನ ವಿದ್ಯಾಕಾಂಕ್ಷಿಗಳಿಗೂ ಅಚ್ಚುಮೆಚ್ಚು ಎನಿಸಿದೆ. 1.5 ಶತಮಾನಗಳ ಅಪೂರ್ವ ಇತಿಹಾಸ ಹೊಂದಿರುವ ಈ ಕಾಲೇಜು ಮುಂದೆಯೂ ಹೀಗೆಯೇ ಅಕ್ಷರದಾಹಿಗಳ ದನಿವು ತೀರಿಸಲಿ ಎಂಬುದು ಎಲ್ಲರ ಹಾರೈಕೆ.
Hello everyone, my name is Tejas Arsalyan. I'm a 2013 student. So my thoughts on the below line is the world is increasingly becoming competitive and dynamic, and humans are on the race to remain strong and still. And during this course of action, somewhere I believe humans have lost their values and become a heartless creature. And this is where education plays a very, very important role, because we need to stress on character building, which has a direct impact impact on nation building, and character building doesn't happen if you do not have the right education. So every improvement boils down to we having the right education. And I'm just not talking about an education, it is also the quality of education that we need to be concentrating on. Being a part of this great institution, I think we've always had quality of education, and this is what I had to say on these lines. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, and have a great day, everybody.
ಒಂದೆರಡು ಸಂಗತಿಗಳನ್ನು ಹೇಳಿದರೆ ತಪ್ಪಾಗಲಿಕ್ಕಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಕಾಣಿಸುತ್ತೆ. ನಾನಿಲ್ಲಿ ಕುಲಪತಿಯಾಗಿದ್ದಾಗ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕಾಲೇಜುಗಳಿಗೂ ವಿಸಿಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದೆ, ಪ್ರೈವೇಟ್ ಆಗಿ, ಅಂದರೆ ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ. ಅದರ ಪರಿಣಾಮವಾಗಿ ಏನು ಗೊತ್ತಾಯಿತು ಅಂದರೆ, ಮಡಿಕೇರಿ ಕಾಲೇಜು ಭಾಳ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿರಲಿಲ್ಲ ಪರಿಸ್ಥಿತಿ. ನಾನು ಅವಾಗ ಮೊಯ್ಲಿಯವರಿದ್ದರು, ಹೇಳಿದೆ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಏನು ಮಾಡೋದು, ಆ ಮಡಿಕೇರಿ ಕಾಲೇಜು ತೊಗೊಂಡ್ಬಿಡ್ತೇವೆ, ಕೊಡ್ತೀರಾ ಅಂತ. ಆದರೆ ಮೊಯ್ಲಿಯವರು ಏನು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರಂದರೆ, ಒಂದು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿ, ಮಡಿಕೇರಿ ಕಾಲೇಜು ತಗೊಳ್ಳಿ, ಸರ್ಕಾರಿ ಕಾಲೇಜು ತಗೊಳ್ಳಿ ಮಂಗಳೂರು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದರು. ನಾನು ಆಯಿತು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದೆ. ಆ ಮಾನ್ಯ ಮೊಯ್ಲಿಯವರ ಸಹಕಾರದಿಂದ ಈ ಕಾಲೇಜ್ ಆಯಿತು, ಆ ಕಾಲೇಜ್ ಆಯಿತು, ಎರಡೂ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಮುಂದೆ ಬಂದಿವೆ. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಆ ಕಾಲೇಜಿನ ಇನ್ನೂ ಬೆಳವಣಿಗೆ ನನಗೆ ಸರಿಯಾಗಿ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ಈ ಕಾಲೇಜು 25 ವರ್ಷದಲ್ಲಿ ಸಾಧಿಸಿದ್ದು ನೋಡಿದರೆ, ಆದರೆ ಹಿಂದಿನ 175 ವರ್ಷದಲ್ಲಿ ಸಾಧಿಸಿದ್ದಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಸಾಧಿಸಿದೆ. ಅದಕ್ಕಾಗಿ ನಾನು ಕಾಲೇಜನ್ನು ಹಾಗೂ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯವನ್ನು ಅಭಿನಂದಿಸಿದೆ. ಯಾಕೆ ಅಂದರೆ, ಈ ಕಾಲೇಜ್ ಹಸ್ತಾಂತರಗೊಂಡು 2 ವರ್ಷ ಮಾತ್ರ ನಾನು ಕುಲಪತಿಯಾಗಿದ್ದೆ. ಆ ನಂತರ ಬಂದಂಥ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕುಲಪತಿಗಳು ಮಂಗಳೂರು ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯ ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಸಹಕಾರ ಕೊಟ್ಟು ಮುನ್ನಡೆಸಿದ್ರಿಂದ, ಒಳ್ಳೆಯ ಪ್ರಿನ್ಸಿಪಲ್ರು ತಮ್ಮ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರಿಂದ ಕಾಲೇಜು ಇವತ್ತು ಪೊಟೆನ್ಷಿಯಲ್ ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಲೆನ್ಸ್ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಬಹಳ ರೇರ್ ರೆಕಗ್ನೇಷನ್ ಇದು. ನಿಜವಾಗಿಯೂ ಬರೀ ಅಭಿನಂದನೆ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಸಾಲದು, ಇನ್ನು ಬೇರೆ ಯಾವುದೇ ರೀತಿಯಿಂದ ಅವರಿಗೆ ರೆಕಗ್ನೇಷನ್ ಕೊಡ್ಬೋದು ಅಂತಂದರೆ, ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯ ಇದು ಸಾಮಾನ್ಯವಾಗಿ ಇದು ಮಂಗಳೂರಿಗೆ ಅಪ್ಲೈ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ತಿಳ್ಕೊಳ್ಬೇಡಿ. ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯಗಳು ಕಾನ್ಸ್ಟಿಟ್ಯೂಂಟ್ ಕಾಲೇಜ್ ನೋಡುವ ದೃಷ್ಟಿ ಒಂದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ನಿಕೃಷ್ಟ.
So way back in 1850s, the prominent members from the civil society of Mangalore thought education is the way for achieving anything in life. They realized it with the advent of the British or the Germans missionaries over here, and then they made an appeal to the then British government to start a provincial school over here. And the discussions went on, and at one point of time the government said that you need to have a purse of 68,000 which is to be deposited with the government, then we can think of starting a school. Raising 68,000 during 1860s was a huge task. Then actually the promoters, they approached the people from this region, right down from Kerala, that is the Kasaragod, up to the Bhatkal in the northern side. They went to all the villages, and we have a list that is being prepared by the college authorities based on the records with the district administration, wherein the contribution from 500 rupees 1,500 to 1 rupee, that is being accounted for. So that is the volume of work that was being done. So in that sense, it is a true public institution, because the contribution has come from people from all communities, from all castes and all creeds. So that is the beauty of it. And then provincial school was started. Initially the adjacent government hospital that we have, it was a military hospital. So the place very close to military hospital was identified, and then the school building was ready in 1890. So the building that we see on the eastern side of it, which we call as the Commerce Block today, was the first one to be constructed. And subsequently the office block was built, another wing to the office block. And in 1920, when Mr. Govinda Krishna Chettur was appointed as the principal, he was taught in Oxford, and he knew Rabindranath Tagore, the Nobel laureate, Rabindranath Tagore personally. Yeah. On this context, he invited Rabindranath Tagore to the government college, the then government college, and in 1922 he visited the college, and in commemoration of his visit, that Academy Hall was built. So the one which is being restored now, that was built in 1922. Govinda Krishna Chettur was a principal for a long tenure from 1920 to 1936, and he also died young. G.K. Chettur was a literature, he was a writer, a poet himself. He has published quite a lot that way, and we should remember him because he laid a very solid foundation for the growth of the education, this institution. So the academic activities that he designed, the co-curricular activities that he has designed are quite unique, because whoever comes back and has reminiscences, they just recollect the UNO conferences that they used to have during their school days, the English drama that they used to play, and a lot of other activities, because we find a lot of old people coming back and trying to recollect how vibrant the campus was, how they could get confidence in their life because of some of the teachers. So that way it was a very great institution, and it could produce statesmen, it could produce politicians, it could produce literatures, writers, social service, people in the social service, social reformers, like for example Kudmul Rangarao, who is a household name in this region in the Reformation movement. In the sense, he was instrumental in getting the people from the marginalized section educated. And then Kamaladevi Chattopadhyay was also a student of this institution at some point of time. And then we have Benegal Ramarao, who went on to become the director of the governor of the RBI, and Dr. Shivaram Karan, the Jnanapita awardee, who has got very nice memories about the institution. So he was invited earlier, where he said that he was very much taken aback by the library, and he spent almost major part of his student life in the library than in the class. Whoever had an opportunity to be the office bearers in the Students' Union, most of them ended being MLAs, MPs, ministers, or at least prominent leaders in the society. So, for example, PM Saeed, who is from Lakshadweep, so he was staying in a hostel over here and attended the college, and he also, in spite of he being an outsider, because of his leadership ability, he became the student union leader in this college, defeating one of the important students from the place, who happened to be from the aristocratic family. But that was a kind of speciality that this particular institution has.
Ideal Cafe. Let you enjoy the real taste of life with mouth-watering delicious snacks and ice cream. Visit Mangalore's favorite destination, Ideal Cafe, Ideal Tower near Sharavu Temple, Mangalore.
ನಿಮ್ಮ ಕನಸಿಗೆ ಹಣ ಒಂದು ಅಡ್ಡಿಯಾಗಬಹುದಾ?
ಅಟ್ಟಿಕಾ ಗೋಲ್ಡ್ ಕಂಪನಿಗೆ ಬನ್ನಿ. ಬೇರೆ ಎಲ್ಲಾದರೂ ಅಡವಿಟ್ಟ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಚಿನ್ನವನ್ನು ಬಿಡಿಸಿ ಇಂದಿನ ಆನ್ಲೈನ್ ರೇಟ್ಗೆ ಕೊಂಡು ಡಿಫರೆನ್ಸ್ ಅಮೌಂಟ್ ನಿಮಗೆ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ. 1 ಲಕ್ಷಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಹೆಚ್ಚಿನ ಹ್ಯಾಪಿ ಕಸ್ಟಮರ್ಸ್.
Attica Gold Company.
ನಿಮ್ಮ ಕನಸುಗಳು ನನಸಾಗಲಿ.
With fantastic infrastructure and guidance from excellent teachers, today I am studying engineering at one of the most reputed colleges in Karnataka.
Real-time experiments at the biology lab inspired me to take up medicine. Thank you, Mahesh PU College.
Thanks.
Over 1,000 of our students have made it to the top engineering, medical and architecture colleges in Karnataka this year with Mahesh PU College.
Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. These words of the great poet William Butler Yeats in his poem The Second Coming probably reflect the kind of society in which we live. If you ask me whether these words apply to the Indian context completely, then I would say a qualified yes. Qualified because Indian society is a different kind of society. We live in the millennial society. India is a country that is progressing by leaps and bounds, but we have a lot of problems, and the youth of this country inherit these problems from us. Problems of all kinds, problems of unemployment, problems of illiteracy, of poverty, of corruption, you name it, these problems are there. The point for us is, how do we solve these problems? How do we move forward to a society that is humane and enlightened? That is the crisis today.
Almighty, create thoughts and actions in the minds of the people of our nation, so they may live united, may they live united. Oh Almighty, this is my prayer. Oh Almighty, help them choose the right path. Bless all the people of our nation.
When I was a student, I had the occasion to travel by train to New Delhi. But then communicating that I had reached New Delhi was a very difficult thing, because the best way to do that was to drop a postcard into the post box so that your family members would get to know maybe after a week that you had reached New Delhi. Telephones were difficult to access. You did not find them very easily, and even if you did, you had to book a trunk call or a person-to-person call, which was even more costlier, and then wait for a long time till you actually made the connection. Today, this seems to be old hat. This seems to be a very old story, because the scenario has completely changed today. How did this transformation come about is a question that we need to ask. Our young people, our students, are familiar with the history and technology of other countries of the world. They know that Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, but they need to know that there was a digital revolution that happened right here in India, and which is happening even to this day. They must know the kind of vision that a person called Sam Pitroda brought into being, using indigenous technology, using the expertise of Indian engineers to bring about a complete transformation in the way in which we connect to one another. That is the inheritance which propels the whole notion of a digital India today. And this indeed is a tremendous source for our young people to grow, to build a new future upon. The only thing is that we need to be aware of this history, and we need to harness this great technology that connects us all together today.
I was born and raised in a small little tribal village in India. My parents had 4th grade education. But they had a dream to send their children to college. They worked very hard to make sure that we get good education. We in return, made sure that we study well. We helped fulfill their dream and our own dream. I went to school in Baroda, got a master's in physics, and then came to US in 1964, got a degree in electrical engineering, set up a business here, and constantly focus on work, family, duty, responsibility, honesty, and building something for myself, my family, and my community. Then I had an opportunity to work with then Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi on telecom and IT. In mid-80s, when I started my work with Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, who gave me the political will to really work in telecom, to transform telecom. In those days, we really had 2 million phones. It used to take 10 years to get a telephone connection. With indigenous development, young talent, and I'll talk about that separately, the benefits of being young and talented people at CDOT, Center for Development of Telematics. We could then plant right seeds for right development in the country. So today, instead of 2 million phones, we have 1.2 billion phones. India is a country of connected billion. In addition, we generate $170 billion worth of software services export every year, year after year. This took about 25 years, but it also needed a lot of young talent. Nothing happens in a short period of time. It takes a decade to make a difference. There are no quick fixes. And I want young to know that you got to invest in your future. If you're trying to get something done quickly, believe me, in the long run, it'll backfire. It won't work. So have patience. I have learned that. And I hope you all realize that the first step is to build yourself. Have a big dream and focus on education, job, and character. To me, that is the most important thing. I want to take this opportunity to also talk about 3 things quickly. I want to share with you the experience I had at CDOT and what it meant to younger generation and the talent. I want to also spend a little bit of time on education and then employment and job creation.
KMC Mangalore Robotic Surgery, 3D visualization, minimal blood loss and significantly faster recovery and shorter stay in hospitals, clinically superior results, reduced risk of complications, minimal scarring, enhanced precision and reduced trauma to the patient, and minimally invasive surgeries. For emergency, contact 0824 222 2227. Na 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 na
ತೇಲುವಂತೆ ಸೆಳೆಯುವ ಛಾಯೆ ನೀನು ಮುತ್ತಾದ ನಿನ್ನ ಮಿಂಚಿಗೆ ಹೂವಾಯ್ತು ಮನದ ಹಂಬಲ ಏನಿ ರೂಪಾಂತರ ಈ ನಿನ್ನ ಹೊನ್ನ ಸ್ಪರ್ಶಕ್ಕೆ ನಾನಾದೆ ಇನ್ನೂ
Abaran Jewelers. ಭಾರತ್ ಆಟೋಕಾರ್ಸ್ ಸರ್ವಿಸ್ ಸೆಂಟರ್. ಭಾರತ್ ಆಟೋಕಾರ್ಸ್ ಈಗ ಬಂದರು ಮತ್ತು ಆಸುಪಾಸಿನ ಜನರ ಮಾರುತಿ ಸುಜುಕಿ ವಾಹನಗಳ ಸರ್ವಿಸ್ ಅವಶ್ಯಕತೆಗಳಿಗಾಗಿ ಸೂಕ್ತ ತಾಣ. ಮಾರುತಿ ಸುಜುಕಿ ಅಧಿಕೃತ ನೂತನ ಸರ್ವಿಸ್ ಸೆಂಟರ್ ಈಗಾಗಲೇ ಕಾರ್ಯಾಚರಿಸುತ್ತಿದೆ. ಈ ತಾಣದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾರುತಿ ಸುಜುಕಿಯವರ ಎಲ್ಲಾ ವಾಹನಗಳಿಗೆ ಸೇವೆ ಲಭ್ಯವಿದೆ. ಭಾರತ್ ಆಟೋಕಾರ್ಸ್ ಪ್ರೈವೇಟ್ ಲಿಮಿಟೆಡ್, ಕಂಡಕ್ಪಳ್ಳಿ, ಬಂದರ್, ಮಂಗಳೂರು. ಸರ್ವಿಸ್ಗಾಗಿ ಕರೆ ಮಾಡಿ 9916923030.
We often say that the youth of this nation are the future, but this future seems to be compromised to some extent by the problem of drug abuse. It is possible for us to turn a blind eye on this. Perhaps the immediate people, the people who are around us, are not affected by this, and therefore we may tend to wish away this problem or neglect this problem. But people in the field tell us that this is indeed a serious issue, and not only does it affect our young people and their futures, it is also a matter that concerns the security of this great nation. So I think it is time that we pay attention to this problem of drug abuse, of substance abuse, and look at it seriously, each one of us, in the home, in the school, parents and children, brothers and sisters, everyone, teachers and students, should all focus their attention on this issue and ask, very importantly, why are students getting into drug abuse? What are the factors that promote this kind of an orientation? This, I think, is the question that we need to ask if we are to find the answers as to why this is happening, and find the solutions as well.
Drug trafficking and narco-terrorism is a major concern globally. I am Dr. Ashwini Shetty from Yenapoya Deemed to be University, and I would like to welcome Dr. G. Srikumar Menon, retired Director General of National Academy of Custom, Excise and Narcotics, and he is also retired Director General, Multidisciplinary School of Economic Intelligence. Welcome you, sir, for this show. So, I have a question for you. Is this illicit trafficking of narcotics is posing a great threat to the society?
The year 2017 saw a massive spurt in the production of opium, especially in Afghanistan. It is estimated that about 900 tons of opium is now in the market circulating, and this is proliferating the demand for opium all over the world. There are multiple drivers, both economic as well as geographically driven, which is pushing forward this opium trade all over the globe.
Okay. Source of opium farms are in Southeast Asia, Southwest Asia, and Latin America. In particular, Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, and Vietnam make up the golden triangle of opium production, while Iran, Pakistan, and Afghanistan make up the golden crescent of opium production. Some 90% of the world's opium is thought to come from Afghanistan alone.
So, can you tell us the reason why the security are referring to the business as narco-terrorism?
Initially, if you see the global issues that were engaging various governments, it was the war on drugs.
Okay.
All governments, including US, China, everybody was battling the war on drugs. Later on, that got transformed into war on terror. And these two, war on drugs and war on terror, were treated on different platforms. But now governments and security experts have come to the conclusion that both these are interrelated and they share a lot of similarities. So now the idea is to tackle both the threats as a single entity. That is why you find that there is an interconnectedness, and this led to the coining of the term narco trafficking.
Why this narco-terrorism is a threat to the national integrity?
See, earlier thinking used to be that military issues were the one that constitutes threat to the security of a country. But now the thinking has changed, and people all over the world, including security experts, think of various soft issues. For example, narco-terrorism, drug trafficking, these are considered to be as a soft threat. And these issues are globally being faced by all countries. So this is also now perceived as a security threat.
And the drug trade supports terrorist networks.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment.
They got a statute added to the Patriot Act, which
makes it a federal crime to engage in drug trafficking that directly or indirectly aids or provides support to a foreign terrorist organization.
How this narco-terrorism is destabilizing the normalcy in the country's economy?
Enormous amount of funds available with the terror groups is being used to destabilize the country in a variety of ways. For example, you find there is a proliferation of drug users, especially student community. Second is the logistics supply, transporters, the warehouse keepers, the agents, the peddlers. A huge parallel economy is on the creation continuously to ensure that the supply of drugs constantly is there in the economy.
Thailand come from Myanmar, still the world's second biggest heroin producer after Afghanistan.
And then this leads to corruption. Corruption in various government departments who are interacting with these kind of drug users and drug peddlers. So the security, from the security point of view, you will find that there is a infiltration and attack at every level of security.
So that means how this narco-terrorism is raising the crime rates in the society?
See, the increase in crime rate is due to the fact that governments across the globe are expanding the scope of the meaning of offences that are being committed under the Narcotics Act. So today you have forming a group is considered illegal, recruiting members are considered as illegal, funding the business of narcotics is illegal. So this problem has created new kinds of crimes being added to the criminal act, whereby people are either treated as accomplices or abettors or funders. So this has expanded the scope of crime. So when we say crime and the crime statistics are taken, you will find that a whole lot of new offences have come in, bringing many people under its ambit.
The label described as narco-terrorism comprises of two threats which were previously defined as the war on drugs and the war on terror. Narco-terrorism is a threat of both menacing behaviours, with the intercorrelated nature of the crimes being used as a method to fund terrorist behaviour through the production and sale of narcotics or through the use of terrorist tactics by international drug dealers.
How the narco-terrorism compromising the security of the country, sir?
Narco-terrorism, because it operates at multiple levels, affecting the security of the country, you will find that drug trafficking involves a lot of criminal acts like killing, intimidation, coercion, as well as the spectre of corruption. Right from the judiciary to all the enforcement agencies are compromised because of the enormous funds available with the drug traffickers.
So that means the narco-terrorism and the drug trafficking, so it requires a plentiful supply of manpower?
Yes. For example, now you see in India also, northeast, where the illegal immigration from Bangladesh and other neighboring countries is on a daily basis, it is steadily increasing. See, these undocumented immigrants, they do not have a legal means of livelihood, and they are always in need of money, and only the narcotic dealers and drug traffickers can ensure that this group of people get a steady income on a daily basis. So, this illegal immigration which is taking place not only in India but all over the world in different countries, every country has a problem, Europe has a problem, America has a problem. So, drug traffickers ensure that these illegal immigrants are recruited for the purpose of peddling various kinds of narcotic drugs.
Okay.
No longer exists in the world, or that it has been largely eradicated. But in fact, it has been reported that there are now more slaves than there have ever been before in history. Modern slavery is largely known as human trafficking and involves the trade of people for labor, sex, and even their organs. So just how bad is human trafficking? Most cases are broken down into two main categories: sex trafficking and labor trafficking. Victims of labor trafficking around the world are often forced to work in sweatshops and mines. Younger victims are exploited and forced to beg on the street and may even be enlisted as child soldiers. Meanwhile, victims of sex trafficking are forced into prostitution and pornography. These victims don't...
So, sir, do you think this thin line ultimately going to dissolve?
Yes. The organizational structure of drug traffickers, criminal syndicates and terror groups have a lot of similarity. First is the secrecy of the operations. Second is the violence and intimidation that is used by all these groups. And third is the psychological fear that they want to bring on their subjects.
Okay.
And the secrecy of their operations.
Who are the Crips, and which gangs are the most dangerous? Their most prolific activities include selling drugs like marijuana and cocaine and using violence to defend their turf.
What do you think about the social implication of narco-terrorism?
The social implications cannot be computed purely in monetary terms. If you see, the steady supply of narcotic drugs in the market has led to a huge student community abusing these kind of drugs. Also, you see similar addiction occurring among software professionals, among films world, modeling profession. So this proliferates across the society, and now even people who are under enormous stress or strain, or the work pressure is enormous, even they are relying on drugs to enhance their performance or to ensure that they are able to attain their peak performance levels.
Very true.
An estimated 230 million people around the world are drug users, and of those, some 27 million are considered to be dependent or drug addicts.
Despite all the difficulties and challenges that our youth face today, we cannot ignore the fact that we are all living in a beautiful world, a fantastic world, a world of fantastic possibilities, a lot of which has been made possible thanks to the new technology that is available with us today. The only thing is that we need to change the technology of the mind, to think positively, to believe in ourselves, to believe in this great city of Mangaluru, to believe in this great nation, and to believe in the future. We can do that only when we change our mindsets, when PR doesn't just become public relations, but PR becomes practice and report, so that we first practice and then report, and that lends an authenticity to what we are saying. And then we could say that Mangalore is watching now, and the Mangalorean diaspora is watching now, and together we can bring the past and the present together to create a new future. There is so much of talent, so much of heritage, so much of energy that all of us can access thanks to the new technology. And when everyone comes together and begins to look at the world with a new vision, then change is indeed possible, and the future can be bright and beautiful.
ಪವರ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್, ಸೂಪರ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್, ಚಾಲೆಂಜಿಂಗ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ ಜೊತೆಗೆಲ್ಲ ಆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದಿರಲ್ಲ, ನಿಮ್ ಫೇವರೆಟ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ ಯಾರು ಮೇಡಮ್?
ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿ ಸ್ಟಾರ್. ಸಿನಿಮಾದಲ್ಲಿ ಕಷ್ಟದಲ್ಲಿರೋರ್ನ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ ಕಾಪಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ನಮ್ ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿ ಹೆಲ್ತ್ ನ ಅಧಿಕ ವಿಟಮಿನ್ಸ್ ಇರೋ ಈ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ ಕಾಪಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಸನ್ ಪ್ರೀಮಿಯಂ ರಿಫೈನ್ಡ್ ಸನ್ಫ್ಲವರ್ ಆಯಿಲ್. ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿ ಸ್ಟಾರ್.
Are you graduate looking for higher education options? The Postgraduate Center at Sri Dharmasthala Manjunatheshwara College offers MSc courses in biotechnology, chemistry, organic chemistry, physics, psychology, statistics, MSW, MCom, MA in English, Economics, Journalism and Mass Communication, as well as Diploma in Fermentation and Bioprocess. Accredited at A grade by the NAAC and rated highly by NIRF, SDM College Autonomous, Ujire is a premier institution of the region. The college prides itself on its state-of-the-art infrastructure such as world-class facilities for teaching and learning, Wi-Fi enabled campus, video conference facility, well-equipped studio and community radio, and fully furnished hostels for boys and girls. In addition to this, the institution also has a judicious mixture of experienced as well as academically brilliant young faculty, and the library is stocked with the excellent learning resources both in the print and digital forms. Make the right choice and shape your future. Join SDM Postgraduate Center, Ujire. Contact 08256 237 800 98800888705. 2 decades of impeccable service towards acquainting guests with Indian hospitality, culture and heritage. Hotel Moti Mahal offers host of services. Hailed as a Mangalore's first business hotel. Come, experience the hospitality and experience the excellent facilities. Mangala, multi-cuisine restaurant. Madhuvan, a pure veg restaurant. Mehfil, lounge bar. Thai Chain Oriental, Chinese restaurant. Moti Sweets, pastry shop. Sheetal, swimming pool. Moti Mahal offers banquet services for various pax capacities. Boardroom. Moti Mahal Convention Hall. Come experience comfort at Hotel Moti Mahal. For reservation call 0824 2441 411. Hotel Moti Mahal, Falni Road, Mangalore.
You know, the youth in Mangalore, especially in Mangalore, across the country, but especially in Mangalore, are at the crossroads. They are the future leaders of tomorrow. That's on one side. They are being educated by the number, and we have a lot of graduates coming out. The jobs are becoming fewer. Now, as they get more and more frustrated, that impact will be seen on society, on our cities and on our country. I think we need to look at how we can influence them or inspire them to do something for themselves and for society. Mr. Goenka, do you have any views on this?
I think there is a lot of creativity which is waiting to be born out of the youth. You know, they are exposed to all forms of media, and the traditional media that we have of print or online is almost, I mean, it's like child's play for them. They are very, very used to watching views on Facebook, on social media, WhatsApp. They communicate with their friends. I think they are already savvy on that part, and all they need to do is use this platform to sort of exchange ideas which will be relevant to their lives. There is a lot of irrelevance happening. Like, take for example, earlier people would go out to drink or entertain themselves. Today they have Facebook to exchange pleasantries, to exchange ideas, views, be together with the family. Now we have newspapers and media. I think youth is already equipped to handle the technology side. They need to make it more relevant. How can they use that to empower themselves and the city they live in? That's important.
And in a converged situation of media is now converging into your mobile phone.
Correct.
Everything is converging into that.
Right.
With that scenario, how do you think they can become relevant? What is the method that they can become relevant?
Relevance is, everyone has a certain hidden passion inside. There is a dream. Earlier days, youth would say, I want to be a doctor, I want to be an engineer, I want to be a chartered accountant. Now there are further bifurcations. Maybe I want to be an artist. Maybe I want to be a sportsman. So there is a variety that is waiting to be born, and there is nothing stopping the youth to know more about that relevant subject. If you can add your passion with your workplace, it will be great. So that availability is there. So you need usherers, people like us who have crossed that path the tough way. We can mentor some of them through a media platform. So media and youth need to be connected. I say youth need to be media ready, in the sense, what is the content of relevance that they need to address? Rather than wasting them time on entertainment or listening to music only, why not think about their future and say, sitting in Mangalore, the youth of Mangalore can address an audience across the globe. So then they will see, my God, we are moving, views across the world. Why not? Why do we need to go to a bigger city? So relevance comes from the passion that they hold. You need, like, the parents are the best guides for some of the students, for the youth. Then teachers are there, faculty is there. In our case, relevance is brought because if they can be given a platform, maybe a collaborative platform, say like Spearhead Media, we are able to bring relevant subjects of their interest and make them discuss trend, what they have read. Lot of us youth need to be observers of what's happening around them. They need to bring relevance on their own. If they need some training on how to do that, we can again mentor them.
Coming back to observations, when the youth observe, especially since you're from the real estate background and from an accounting background, you are the president of CREDAI, Mr. Mehta, youth are observing everything. They know that Mangalore wants to be a smart city, and they're trying hard to do that. How can youth involve themselves in this project? Not only to better society and the city, but how can they get employed beneficially for themselves, but give back to society?
See, we have to understand what is the mindset of the current youth generation. It falls into this bracket, work hard, play hard. So unless and until you provide the infrastructure where they get time for doing both the activities, the workplace as well as the entertainment, leisure activities put together into one social environment, the youth will not be attracted to that city.
Correct.
And of late, unfortunately, we have seen a lot of highly educated and trained youth moving to bigger cities like Bangalore, Bombay, etc. Now, smart city is a concept basically to bridge that gap, which is right now in the city. And smart city concept, sometimes it is misunderstood that it will be all based on the current digital way of life. It is actually not. because we are still far away. That may be smart city stage 2. Let us look at this smart city stage 1, what has been envisaged in the policy of the smart city. It is very simple. There are 3 aspects of the smart city. One is the area based development. This will be taking care of the old areas of a particular city. How do we integrate these old areas into the modern new way of living? Be absolutely green based greenfield projects, new developments. Now, this new development part of the smart city is a very interesting concept. It builds upon the existing strength of the city. So, like if you look at Mangalore, what is its strength? The service industry is its strength. Be it the information technology sector, or be it the healthcare, or be it tourism, or be it sports. So the smart city, if it's catering to this kind of infrastructure, where it brings in both the job opportunities as well as the making the concept of living smarter, which would attract the youth, will be able to do this. Will be able to retain the youth also. They will be fruitfully employed, as well as they will enjoy the city. And the smart city is basically looking at that.
Okay. Media as such is a social influencer, because whatever comes in the media influences your mind in a particular direction. Maybe you tend to believe that direction, but it does influence it. The youth are themselves very strong when they are together. Now, when these two marry, don't you think that we can transform society faster? Do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, now, if you look at the youth, they are full of, both the creative energy as well as execution energy. Okay. Now, if creativity goes on into a wrong direction, the execution also happens in the wrong direction.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I'll give you a classic example of, where Mangalore went wrong a few years back, which brought about a very huge negative publicity. One was the pub attack. Now, when there is a gap between the creativity and execution, this kind of problems will come into the society. Today's youth want to express themselves, and even going to a pub is one way of expressing that this is the way they would like to have their leisure time. This is the way they would want to unwind after a hard day's work. But if this gap continues, we'll have similar problems. So this distortion has to come out of the city, and hopefully for the last few years, I think we are seeing that synergy happening between the creativity and the execution, and this is good for a city.
Mr. Goenka, you have any thoughts on how media and youth can interact to bring change, not only for themselves but for society at large?
I think there is a very interesting opportunity Mangalore city has. It has been my first visit here, and I'm amazed to see the peace, tranquility that is there, the cleanliness that is there. It's a great city to be in. It can be the best nurturing ground for ideas and innovation. It doesn't have too much distraction of big cities. So you are in a city, yet you can live creatively. You have old and the new blending very beautifully. You have the intelligent and the dumb both together. So I think there is a very interesting opportunity to declare and probably create a media sanctuary, which is nothing but a distributed learning platform across media companies and across businesses. So you take verticals like the construction industry, builders. They need the media, media needs them. Similarly, you have 50 other verticals. You have artists who are wanting to express themselves. There are youth who want to get into artistry or sports management or subjects which have never been discussed. A media sanctuary is a very tranquil place where there is a natural outflow. It need not be one geography, it can be 50 geographies in. So you can have an intelligent township and you can have a beautiful tranquil garden which can be like a part of the larger. So a sanctuary is some place where you get the perfect environment. So rather than one spot, you have 50 spots. So it's a very interesting concept that a few media companies can work together. Like we have some of them that we have seen here. So we people like influencers in different verticals can come together, discuss issues, and maybe outside, not inside studios. That's the way, with the artists, with the youth, with people who are involved in the making of a great city. Like Goa has become almost like a creative sanctuary, let's put it, not a media, but all creative events, film shows, everything happening across different parts of Goa. And the city gets to host people coming there. I think it's a great time for people who are from Mangalore, who are living in different parts of the world, to take a look at the type of life the tranquil life, intelligent life, people where there's creativity happening, media is getting involved in the life of the city, in the education, in various fields. So that's a very interesting concept.
Absolutely. There is a term which I like. It's called creative employment. You use the word creativity and you use the word employment separately, but I put it together. Now, how would you use that word? And when you come down to brass tacks, the youth have to earn money. They have to survive. They have to look after themselves, their families. As they grow older, they get married. And in Indian culture, that's very important. In creative employment, sometimes the steady flow of income may not be there. How do you think we can marry the two?
See, basically, creativity does not itself, get catapulted into a fruitful employment unless and until there's a platform provided for that.
Yes.
Okay, now smart city is one such medium where we can come with the platform. Now, Mr. Goenka was discussing about a film city. It can be a project in the smart city. So like we were talking about a sports city. What does a sports city mean? You have a basic learning system of your basic education along with sporting facilities of the international standards. Today you look at a student who wants to be a sports person. In Mangalore you won't have any international standard, either the tracks or the swimming pool or you name it, nothing is available. So say like now Smart City has started with a project for international standard swimming pool, which will be the first in Mangalore. So if these are integrated into a single arena, this is just an example of creativity into employment. Then this can translate into expressing your creativity, learning also, and getting a fruitful employment.
Okay.
The second area is tourism. Now, tourism does not mean only people coming for sightseeing. Tourism is a vast subject. Tourism includes A, food, B, music, C, leisure activities, and a lot of other things. Now, the concept that has emerged out of the smart city for tourism is the riverfront, waterfront development, specifically to bring in about, integrated development, both for the local people, for them to go there for leisure, for tourists who would want to come, and that will become a tourist attraction. So people from, not only the state, but all of the country will be attracted to come to Mangalore to be part of this ecosystem where, it's not only tourism, but it's complete entertainment, complete lifestyle, So many other activities that can happen along with the, waterfront development, where both the creativity gets employed fruitfully, as well as the youth will, get attracted towards this kind of concepts and would like to stay behind.
Yeah, actually, a friend of mine was, just taking off from what you said, a friend of mine was actually suggesting to me the other day that we have this whole coastline, and just like we have these corniches in the Gulf cities, if they are demarked into small parcels of land and they are leased out for 30 years, 40 years, you can have a whole lot of development, you can have a whole lot of entertainment, and in the European countries you have people sitting in these corniches and actually singing for their money. So there's a lot of chances for employment which are dignified, may not be initially but later on, and people will take to them with their using their passion for earning. Coming back to the media, Mr. Goenka, you have had a long history in the media business. Ownership is changing hands. It's not the individual anymore. It's more companies that are owning it. The nature of the media is changing, and we are a small city. We may be smart, but we are a small city. But how do you think media from a small city, in a small way, can contribute to the development of the city as well as to the larger society in India?
I think example setting first happens in the mind of the person who wants to promote it. Media people in the city should understand nothing can happen alone. This individual entity has to merge into a collaborative entity. I am seeing collaboration happen in this studio itself. You have 2 to 3 entities. Global TV is there, Spearhead Media is there, the channel owner is there. I would say that there should be a collaboration of 20 people who have some aspiration. There is a big lot of B2B media, which is again happening in some pockets. If all of them can come and collaborate without getting into anyone's shoes, and they can project both the city as well as create examples of excellence. So it has to start in the minds of media owners. Because media is a great influencer. So take any media owner, can show an example. So it needs openness, it needs discussions, it needs how can we work together to create a great story. Ultimately media is what? A great exercise in storytelling. You are telling a story to the people in the area of real estate, in smart cities. I am telling stories of media. So can I tell it in a way that can be easily consumed? So collaboration is the way.
Thank you very much. It's been a wonderful development talk, I think. That's what the theme of today's program is. And I think it has been really mind-opening in that sense. Thank you, Mr. Goenka. Thank you, Mr. Mehta.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Every alumni to be connected to the campus. That is why we are created. Now we created the Kalam flag because we don't want anything. We want everything to be focused. Yeah.
For freedom, after that freedom from powerful people like Indira Gandhi, when during the emergency everybody is aware of that landmark area. So the grandfather's thing was to give all the independence to the journalists, right? But today the journalists have moved. So what we talk is youth getting media ready.
One is position, another is possession. But we are killing ourselves by giving life to these two things. Abdul Kalam was one person who did not derive any benefit from his position or possession. On the other hand, he gave honor to the position he held and gifted all the possessions to the government.
But today the youth required to identify their own inner strength. When they identify their inner strength, they can bring a change. For bringing a change, they have to change themselves. Nobody can change anyone. We have to change ourselves. That self-belief the youth have to have.
Share it with the fellow beings and make the world a better place to live. It is very, very important. Don't think that things cannot change. If education can make Abdul Kalam out of a small lad from an unknown village, what can prevent you from becoming great?
aware of the positive developments in the society, because negativity comes to us very fast. But for being aware of the positive developments, we need to make some efforts. I see in Mangalore lots of orphanages and old age homes are being run by many good agents of social change who do their service to the humanity, selfless service.
Say something about organ donation. Since yesterday we celebrated National Organs Day, and you should understand why organ donation. There is a huge difference between the donors and recipients. As per NATO data, annually we require 2 lakhs kidneys, but only 9,500 available. Hearts we require around 35,000, but only 500 available.
ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮದ ಪ್ರಾಯೋಜಕರು
ಐಡಿಯಲ್ ಕೆಫೆ,
ಶ್ರೀರತ್ನಂ ಮಲ್ಟಿ ಕ್ಯೂಸಿನ್ ವೆಜ್ ರೆಸ್ಟೋರೆಂಟ್,
ಆಟಿಕಾ ಗೋಲ್ಡ್ ಕಂಪನಿ, ಆಭರಣ್ ಉಡುಪಿ, ಮ್ಯಾಂಗ್ಲಾ, ಶಿವಮೊಗ್ಗ, ಕಾರ್ಕಳ ಅಂಡ್ ಕುಂದಾಪುರ, ಅಮೃತ ವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯಂ, ಕೆಎಂಸಿ ಹಾಸ್ಪಿಟಲ್, ಲೈಫ್ಸ್ ಆನ್, ಭಾರತ್ ಆಟೋ ಕಾರ್ಸ್ ಪ್ರೈವೇಟ್ ಲಿಮಿಟೆಡ್.